arrest. In this section, we'll be looking at arrest, different types of arrest, how to make a good arrest, and then we'll be looking at how arrest fits into the pretrial process. This is a summary of pretrial process, and as you can see, arrest is the stage that marks the beginning of the pretrial process and gets us started through that process. The very first thing to remember when it comes to arrest is that the quality of the arrest makes a huge difference when it comes to trial and pretrial. In order for us to be able to move through and have a case that will be successfully concluded with a prosecution, the quality of the arrest means a lot. Police have a lot to do with what happens to a case as it goes through the pretrial and trial process. When an officer is in the midst of investigating a crime and making arrest, the way that an officer articulates the crime, the documentation, the evidence collected, the quality of all that material makes a difference later on. The keys to a conviction are investigation, collection of evidence in a constitutional way with no errors, making sure that we've respected all of the rules of evidence collection, locating cooperative witnesses, getting good testimony and good statements. If any of those pieces during the arrest process aren't done carefully and thoroughly, we're going to have gaps throughout trial where evidence is not going to be sufficient or testimony is not going to be sufficient. So it's really important that the quality of an arrest is really good, really high. And what's interesting, or maybe not so interesting, is that quality varies across the board. There may be departments that are really good at report writing, have really stringent rules on evidence collection. There may be other departments that there's a big question mark there. Maybe not some great arrests, maybe a lot of shortcuts taken, maybe their officers don't write great reports. So from department to department, officer to officer, agency to agency, you will see a huge variation in the quality of those arrests. There are two types of an arrest, and we'll look at charging documents a little bit later, but two types of arrest are a custodial arrest and a non-custodial arrest. And I'd like you to think about the arrest as the same function. It is the same thing. With a custodial arrest, an officer goes to a crime scene, for example, let's say a shoplifting. They investigate, they decide they have probable cause for an arrest, and they say, I'm going to put you under arrest. Under a custodial arrest, you take that person to jail. They are in custody. You transport them to the jail, they remain there. The officer is going to write up the arrest on a charging document, and at the bottom they sign the document saying, I swear that everything that I've documented in here substantiates the arrest. That arrest happens, they are transported to a corrections facility, and corrections are then tasked with making sure that that arrestee arrives to their next trial appearance, to their pretrial stuff. When you're locked up, obviously you can't take yourself to court. Corrections will be responsible for that. Conversely, if you do a non-custodial arrest, let's say we respond to that same shoplifting, we end up saying you're under arrest for shoplifting, and we do a paper arrest. It's the same charging document. We write out all of the probable cause that substantiates the arrest. The officer signs the bottom. The only difference is that rather than taking that piece of paper to a corrections agency and having them sign saying we will take responsibility for this arrestee, the arrestee signs the bottom of this charging document saying, by signing this document, I am not accepting fault. I accept and I acknowledge that I have been arrested, and I promise to appear at my pretrial hearings. So rather than corrections taking you to your pretrial appearances like you would if you were in a custodial arrest, when you are non-custodial arrested, you are still arrested. You are just responsible for yourself at that point. You have promised to bring yourself to pretrial hearings. And obviously, if you don't show up, a warrant will be issued for your arrest, but the effect of the arrests are the same. You are arrested with a custodial arrest, and you are still arrested with a non-custodial arrest. To summarize, an arrest, and we're going to look at this more in depth later, is based on those statutory elements. You look at the statute, you read the elements in the statute, and you have to be able to articulate or document that what you are charging this person with, that they have actually done, that they meet those statutory requirements. When you document all of those things, you have developed that probable cause. You have articulated, you have verbalized, you have written all the ways that the person matches the requirements of the statute. If they match those requirements of the statute, you have established probable cause and you can make that arrest. You articulate those elements and that probable cause in a report, in an affidavit, in some sort of formal charging document that substantiates the arrest. You have to go through the appropriate application of due process in getting to that point. You can't just beat somebody until they give you a confession. There are constitutional rights about how you interview and interrogate. You can't just arrest somebody without reading them their rights. You can't just search or seize somebody without respecting their Fourth Amendment search and seizure rights. So together, those statutory elements, finding your probable cause, articulating your probable cause in the statutory elements, and also making sure that you respect all the constitutional boundaries that are on you during the course of that investigation, all of those things substantiate an arrest. And if you do all those things appropriately, thoroughly, and do a good job, you will have a quality arrest that will stand through the rigor of trial.